Vertigo Nation, welcome back. You know what time it is. I am your host, Sean, here to bring you another episode that will make your head spin. Thank you for joining me. If you're new here and you like what you hear, please make sure you hit that subscribe button. You can also find me on Facebook, TikTok, I'm forgetting something, Instagram, all the social media that is out there. Make sure that you're looking for the Vertigo Podcast with your host, Sean. And again, thank you. Thank you so much for the continued support. Can't say it enough. I say it every episode. I will continue to say it every episode. I am so appreciative of all of the people who listen in. And so thank you so much. With that being said, this episode is going to be another solo episode. So hopefully you don't mind and stick around. I'm going to be talking a little bit. Well, I'll fill you in a minute on what I'm going to be talking about. But last episode, my sister Kelly was here. Got a lot of positive feedback and positive responses from her being here. And we're going to make sure that Kelly is a little bit more regular on the show. I also enjoy when she comes in. Her and I hit it off so well. And it's just natural, it when you find somebody that you can just co-host with like that, and it doesn't take a lot of effort or work, it's so easy. Also, upcoming episodes, we'll have some more guests. They're currently being scheduled. Some you've heard from before and some brand new. So once I get those on the schedule, I'll make some more announcements. So pay attention to Facebook, Instagram, TikTok for all of your Vertigo Nation news. VNN. All right. So, past episodes, obviously, I've talked a lot about my boys. A few of them have actually been on the show. Obviously, Sean, Maddox, and Zach have all been on the show. Seth, lives in near the Corning. I wanted to say Cortland, but not Cortland, and I knew that wasn't right, but down near the Corning area. And so, unfortunately, he doesn't get to make it up as often. But, looking forward to having him on the show at some point, too. But today, I thought I was going to kind of give just a special nod to my daughter, because I do talk so much about my boys, and obviously I'm so proud of them and the things that they have accomplished for themselves and the journey that they are on. And, they're on an amazing journey. I don't know, how else to say it or what else to say. So especially proud of them. But, my daughter, I don't get a lot of opportunity. She's special needs. So that makes it a little bit, I guess, different right there, because, she's considered nonverbal. So I can't get her to come in and sit down and have a conversation in the essence of how we do on a podcast. With that being said, I don't see her as being nonverbal at all. I just see that she communicates differently. And so I definitely feel like her and I have a strong connection, and that I absolutely am in tune to her needs and wants. I think that for the most part, if she wasn't 14, she would probably agree. But, of course she's 14, so she's got that little bit of independent teen attitude going on. So she would probably be like, yeah, whatever. But, so the opportunity for her to actually come on the show, although I've thought about getting some sound bites and stuff from her and using them, but I wanted to talk a little bit about specifically, I guess, what it's like being a special needs dad, because it does come with a variety of different, I don't even really know, it's just different, I guess, and I think honestly, I tried to deny a lot of times that it's different. I think a lot of times I try to play off like, oh, it's not really that different. It's just, because everybody's kids are different, right? In one way or another. Nobody raising a child, A, raises their child exactly the same way, and B, that child is also an independent being. And so, their needs, wants, and how they interact with us as parents and the world, is everybody's different, right? So I try to hide behind, I guess, this thing of, it's not that different. and I think I kind of try to shun that like special needs, characterization. And the truth of the matter is that as much as I think obviously I must have a problem with it more than not, because I wouldn't struggle so hard to shun that definition, I guess. But so I'm going to tell you a little bit about Gia's story real quick, just so you kind of have a background. But Gia's 14, obviously lives at home with Min and I. And and Gia has this incredible superpower, man. Anybody that meets Gia just falls in love with her, because she is that kind of light. She really is. Anybody who has had the opportunity to meet Gia from in school, her teachers, I mean, her teachers still, and teachers are pretty incredible people anyway. I feel like teachers, especially good teachers, they remember students. And so, all of us at some point in our life, we have a memory of that teacher, or there's a teacher that we still hold in high regard, and that teacher probably also still remembers us. And if we have the opportunity to still see them, probably even still is warm and fuzzy to us, hopefully. And I feel like that's Gia. She's one of those people who imprints on people, and when she meets people, people remember her. Hopefully for the right reasons, because she can have a little toot at times. But like I said, she's 14. So anyway, Gia, Min and I adopted Gia when she was just 2 years old. So Gia's lived with us for 12 years. And we knew that Gia had special needs at the time that we did the adoption. At that time, we were already aware she is a cancer survivor. She survived a cancer called optic glioma, which is, it's not a deadly cancer. It's not a cancer that typically it does cause blindness, and it does have, I don't want to make light of it. It's cancer, but it's not often a type of cancer that is deadly. However, for Gia, so an optic glioma is just that. It's a cancer cell tumor that is growing on the optic nerve. In Gia's case, where it was on the optic nerve was also very close to the pituitary gland, and because of the size of the tumor, it was putting some pressure on the pituitary gland. And so they tried, to shrink the tumor using, obviously medication, chemo, and had no luck, no dice. And so, now she's in foster care at this point in time when this was all happening. And so they decided that the best course of action was to remove the tumor. And so she had a surgery to remove the tumor. The surgery was, for all practical purposes, was successful. They were able to remove most of the tumor. She still does have a little bit left, and she still has to have that observed, but it's not growing and it's not causing any issues. However, after the surgery, Gia, who is now 1 year old at this point, she had a stroke. And the stroke, so the tumor and that operation left her blind. And often kids with an optic glioma, they end up blind anyway, because unfortunately that is what the cancer robs them of is their sight. So as much as it's not a deadly cancer, again, it obviously has some negative impacts, and one of those is blindness. And so Gia was more likely going to be blind whether she had the surgery or not. Of course, having the surgery, caused her to be blind. But then on top of that, she had a stroke. And so the stroke is actually what caused more of her needs than not, right? And so because she had the stroke, she's got left side weakness that also impaired her ability to be able to, speak. Although, like I said, Gia definitely, she does say words. She likes to repeat movie lines. So she is able to do it. But, it's minimal, I guess. She doesn't communicate in the same way or speak as clearly. And so it's hard to understand what she's saying. And a lot of it sounds like kind of like baby babble, to be honest with you. And so anyway, so that was her life before coming to us. So obviously, she has been able to be stable, and was able to heal and was able to be adopted. And so Min and I adopted her. Again, that was, 12 years ago, at least right now. And so I remember, so Gia is originally from Texas. And I will tell you, yes, she is adopted, but you can't tell me that. Man, the love that I feel for her is no different than the love that I feel for any of my other children, A, but B, biological or not, doesn't matter, man. So I can tell you she's adopted, but don't you dare tell me she's adopted, if you know what I mean, because in my mind that doesn't matter, and it's not a thing. So when I first met her, so Amanda went down, Min went down to, I was going to say El Paso, not El Paso, San Antonio. So Gia is originally from San Antonio, Texas. So Min went down to see her and to meet her and do a meet and greet. And that was kind of the first step in the adoption. So Min got to meet her first. Of course, I got to meet her via FaceTime and such like that, but it's obviously not the same, right? So fast forward, we get approved for the adoption. All of those things, happen, which are time consuming. And Gia makes her way from San Antonio, Texas to Syracuse, New York, to the airport. And so I remember that day meeting her, she gets off the plane with her, social worker at the time. And I remember, so again, Min had already spent time with her and met her. So Min greeted her first, of course, because that's at least a familiar voice person to Gia. But then I scooped her up out of her little safety seat that, carrier that she was in. Again, she's about two and a half at this point. She's just a little peanut, man. And I remember grabbing her out of that whatever, seat carrier, car seat kind of thing. And I just fell in love with her. I still look at pictures from that first night that she was home, just being so amazed, doing all the things that parents do, counting her fingers, counting her toes, just as if she was newborn, from the hospital, just talking with her, trying, I became obsessed. I remember almost immediately, with her, and ironically still feel that connection with Gia to this day, actually. She's brought so much light to my life, and I'll kind of get into that. So Gia, right from jump, just stole my heart, man. And like I said, was just this incredible light. And so the irony is that, again, we knew that Gia was going to have, needs, and we knew that. Ironically, so here's a funny story. So we went out to Canales in Oswego with the social worker and Gia and the family to kind of just, have dinner and kind of get everybody, comfortable, meeting everybody. Of course, the social worker's got to spend some time with the family too and kind of make sure that everything's kosher and all that jazz, right? So it's an uncomfortable thing, but it is what it is. And so I remember, that's what we did. So anyway, again, so Gia, being Gia, and us just learning, her at that point in time, she's got this thing called diabetes insipidus. And so it's different than sugar. It doesn't deal with sugar. All right. And I'm going to just do a real quick and dirty, because if I had to sit here and explain like all the medical stuff, it would be an hour-long podcast on just that. But basically, her body doesn't adjust to her sodium specifically. Electrolytes the same. So she gets really either low sodiums or high sodiums, and that can cause a problem. And so she's got medication, and it's regulated much like, diabetes, regular diabetes. But again, it's sodium based instead of sugar. So before I digress and go down that and get over explanatory, we're sitting there at Canales, and here's Gia, 2.5 years old, in the high chair, and she's just passed out. So we're all like, oh, this is so cute. She's had this long trip from San Antonio, So this brand new to us, right? Haven't really been acclimated to her needs yet, right? And she's just passed out, man, just passed out, not moving, not whatever. I mean, she's, obviously if you poke her or whatever, she gets that grumpy, like, whatever, but just passed out, doesn't make a peep. Now, fast forward, the next day we had her first physical to get her situated with her doctor. So we get her up there, and she's still just kind of sleeping, and the doc's like, this isn't right. So anyway, sends her to upstate. So our first week with Gia being, quote unquote, home with us was actually at SUNY Upstate. And I think she was in the hospital for a couple of weeks. I mean, which was good because her medical team was going to be through Upstate anyway. So it got her established pretty quickly. We didn't plan it that way, but yeah, so Gia literally came off the plane, was with us for the night, and then boom, right into the hospital. So that was our introduction to Gia. And, it's been kind of a roller coaster ride since. I mean, she's had years where she's been really awesome and not a lot of hospitalizations and hospital stays. And then, this past current year, right around Thanksgiving, actually started in September of 24 right through November of 24, she had quite some lengthy hospital stays, and it had gotten really scary. So, so there's kind of Gia in a nutshell. She's one of those kiddos who, like I said, when she's home and I don't know. I don't even really know how to explain it. But my point is so how as a special needs dad do you kind of cope with all of this? Because like I said, it's one of those things where, she's home and she's doing really, really well, and you don't really think about the special needs part of it, right? It's just taking care of Gia. It's just like you would any other kid. She likes to be in her room. She likes her movies. She likes her music. She likes that kind of stuff. And so, that's not really that different. She gets upset when you have to go someplace and she doesn't really want to go, and, all of those things. But then there's these hospital stays, where you then start to realize really quickly, the value, I guess, of life, and the value of the, these relationships, I guess, it's tough because, there's so much to weigh out, especially as a guy. I think, for me, I'm really try to really be good about, responsibilities, and staying on top of it. Like, I've got to go to work. I've got to go and do these things. And I am loyal to almost a fault, with work, at least. Like, I don't like missing work. It bothers me. It stresses me out, but at the same time, I understand that, and also burn myself out where I get just, emotionally depleted to the point where it's like, I can't even fathom interacting with people. And so that, of course, causes call-ins, but then Gia, so I take on so much, I think, and then I'm beginning to understand, like, the impacts of that. And so, anyway, that's kind of the tough part, too, with Gia is, like, she's got these hospital stays, and they can be lengthy. I mean, we're talking a month sometimes. I think sometimes it's even been longer than that. I think her longest hospital stay has been almost 2 months. So it's difficult, right? And then you got to try to figure out, like, obviously you can't take 2 months off from work. Well, I guess you could. I mean, obviously there is a Family Leave Disability Act and all that stuff. But, it's difficult because you're trying to navigate, what is normal and getting up and going to work and doing the stuff and doing the thing, but yet also deal with the fact that, your child is sick and in the hospital. And unfortunately, it's a helpless feeling too, because there's just really not a whole lot that you can do. Obviously it's known that these are all kind of symptoms of and side effects of, the disease progression, in a sense, the not necessarily the optic glioma, but everything that followed, the surgery and the damage to the pituitary gland, the stroke, the scar tissue in the brain. All of these are symptoms of, a greater kind of thing going on. And we don't really know as she gets older how that's going to look or what that's going to do. And so it comes with all these other fears, anxieties, thoughts, And so, you know, it's just, it's incredible. And then I guess, I never really thought about it. And I guess I never even really thought about it until obviously I had this subject in mind when I was getting ready to do the podcast. But now that I'm sitting here with the mic on and really kind of talking through this, I realize there's a whole lot of emotions that I don't think that I ever really have sifted through or even really begun to, I don't identify or wrestle with. I don't know which it is, because I guess I wasn't as prepared as I thought, because like I said, sitting here thinking about it now, it's like, I wanted to talk about all of the fun that, Gia is, like all of our kids, I love going in. She loves music, right? She's a kid who just absolutely loves music and is willing to like experience it all. So Maddox, as you know from if you've listened to his episodes being on the show, is a huge extreme, metal guy. And so when I say extreme metal, for anyone who has not listened to those episodes, like he listens to like death metal and metalcore and deathcore and, the extreme metal, heavy stuff. And he's introduced Gia to that. And there's some of it that she absolutely loves, man. And she will just, you can always tell when she loves a song because she just sits up and boy, she just bounces along, whether it's, kind of, she does this dance, and she just starts grooving and dancing and doing her thing. And so, like I said, there's music that Maddox has introduced her to that she's absolutely just loved. And then you've got Min, who definitely is more, like a late 90s, early 2000s, like hip hop and pop music. And Gia absolutely loves listening to that with Min. And funny thing is too is 80s. Both Min and I love, the 80s music. And so we'll put on like iHeart 80s or whatever. And Gia absolutely loves that. And we'll start grooving and bopping and dancing. And then, like I said, and then, me being a classic rock and hard rock and metal guy, she will listen to a lot of that stuff too. So she's got this amazing personality, and it's cool how much she just like absorbs what the family also likes and how she's absorbed that, but also has her own personality and her own, like I would say her favorite probably music that she listens to is really like it would be kind of like that neo soul, I guess, like Teddy Swims, Ed Sheeran. Like she's a huge Ed Sheeran fan. She's really a huge Teddy Swims fan now. So those are definitely like that's her music. When but it again is willing to listen and experience all of it. And so I guess my point being is that it's so easy to sit here and talk about all of the things that she loves and that she enjoys, but where the real stress comes in as being a parent of a special needs kiddo is those times where things get rough, hospital stays, navigating that, navigating work and when she's in the hospital and navigating the guilt of like, here I am working and really maybe I should be at the hospital, but if I'm at the hospital and I'm missing X day in a row of work, it's like this constant battle, and you constantly are wrestling with yourself and your own thoughts on what's right, what should I be doing? And of course, there's no right answer to any of that, but it's just personal feeling. And I am very fortunate that the jobs that I have had have been very understanding of Gia's needs and have never really batted an eye at what I need to do to make sure that she is taken care of. And I so appreciate that because that takes off so much stress, but it's hard to say that it's still not in the back of the mind when you're going, gosh, I should be at work, or I should, whatever, the shoulds, right? You should not should on yourself, as a counselor once told me. But, so anyway, yeah, it just comes with this whole nother level of dealing with things emotionally, And then I have to admit that I am also just trying to learn and navigate my own mental health in general, Obviously, that's no secret. One of the things that we talk a lot about on Vertigo, whether we're goofing or not, is, where people are on their journey of, self-discovery, but also just, things that impact us and where we're at and kind of that whole like mental health check-in. Um, and so here I am on this path of wanting to be better and wanting to, kind of come out on top as a better version of myself. But I also have to acknowledge that I'm not just struggling with my own like pieces of healing within myself. Like there are these outside things, Gia being one of them, that we deal with, that it makes it really difficult. And so then that plays into all of it. And then of course with that comes the guilt of like, well, I probably should not be feeling this way, or I should not be, and it's so anyway, I guess what I'm trying to say is that being a special needs parent and a special needs dad comes with its own kind of braided rope, that you've got this other things that you need to navigate. I wish I could tell you that, of course I worry about my kids, right? I worry about my boys. That's a normal part of being a parent, even though they're all in their 20s. They're all young adults, really. They're not kids. They're young adults. Um, Two of them have kids of their own. Zach and Sean have been on the show and they've talked about being parents themselves. And so obviously, they are growing and moving on and living their lives. And it's such a proud moment to see, right? And you always feel this, though, connection of like, you just don't ever want anything to happen to your kids. And so then dealing with Gia, though, is this kind of reality of knowing that mortality is lurking. I don't know how to put it. Like you just fuck, man, I don't really even know how to say it. I guess I'll just put it out there as plain as I can put it, and then it's just out there, I guess. But I know that her life expectancy is shorter than most people's. Now, it doesn't mean that I have a date or an age or anything like that. Like, we don't know, but we know that as she has gotten older, she's aging more rapidly than most kids because of the stress that her body is already under, because of, again, the things that had happened to her at such a young age. And so, it's really tough to really kind of wrap your head around it, because on one hand, I see this kid who's 14 playing in their room, listening to their music, and they don't seem that different. But then there's the hospital stays and the reminders that she's lived a lifetime in 14 years. And I don't know how to wrestle with that. And I definitely don't know how to necessarily come to terms or make peace with that. Obviously, therapy and things like that are extremely important. But I also just have my own way of kind of dealing with things. And that's the tough part. And so needing to understand, or, I don't even know, like, so this last hospital stay was pretty significant, and palliative care, got involved. And again, we don't know. Gia's fine and healthy now, but things change for her so rapidly. And again, she's 14, she's going through puberty, she's going through changes. And we just don't know how her body's going to respond. And so, it's just so crazy, and I'm sure people who have loved ones who are battling cancer or maybe are on hospice or, those things, they can understand. And I'm not saying that anybody else doesn't understand, but it's just a different level that it's hard to explain emotionally to people. That, I feel like I have a really good front. I play really well. I can put a smile on my face and be pretty chipper, and no one would know the difference. But I can't tell you how many times I feel like I get lost within my own sea of thoughts, thinking about, waking up in the middle of the night because I hear Gia making noise, and instantly waking up in wonder because she has seizure disorder as well. Is she having a seizure, running in there in a panic just to find that, she's just sleeping and being a kid and, maybe made a noise in her, I don't know. Maybe she farted. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? And, it just comes with this whole different level. And those are the things that make it hard, to kind of go through. And it's like, it's not one of those things where you think about it daily, right? It's not like I'm sitting at work every day wondering. But it's like you just find yourself lost in these moments at times. And I guess you just need to give yourself grace and kind of allow yourself to have those moments to get lost in those thoughts. But I think it's also important to really understand that you've got to pull yourself back to reality and kind of do the self-talk of like, hey, everything's cool, everything's going well, everything is A-okay, there's no worries. Like, you kind of got to just do that thing, I guess. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if this pod is I guess it's a lot more difficult than I thought it was going to be, coming on the mic and just kind of introducing my daughter and talking about life with her. Because there's a lot of things, like I said, that are different. She's in a wheelchair, for example. So going out in public and going to appointments, like I don't care about people like staring there. And I feel like there's not a lot of that anymore. It's not like in 1980, I feel like in 2025, there are still people who are rude. There are still times when I'm pushing her. We took her through Taste of Syracuse, for example, which I know is busy, but she has every right to go. She has every right to experience that just as much as the next person. And people just get so upset because I'm trying to push through a crowd with her in a wheelchair. It's like, listen, people. I had one dude who I was pushing her through the crowd, and I accidentally hit his ankle with her foot thing and like spun around like ready to fight. And I'm like, dude, it was an accident. First of all, she's in a wheelchair, and you're not gonna, you're not, there's no reason you're not gonna do this right now, kind of thing. It's like I feel like that. I get protective of my boys for sure. But there's a rage that comes out real quick if someone wants to like look at her cross-eyed or, wants to say something because we're trying to push through, a crowd in her wheelchair. I've noticed, I'll tell somebody to go shit in their hat real fucking quick. And I'm not saying that that's okay. I've just noticed that difference, that kind of like, hey, she's got every right to be here, and maybe you should watch what you're doing and maybe get the fuck out of the way. But anyway, I've digressed, right? I've been all over the place. I mean, so I guess in an essence, all of these things that I've been talking about are exactly what is real about being a special needs dad, right? Like all of these thoughts, what you've heard for this past, I don't know how long we've been doing this, 30 minutes or so, all of these thoughts and all of these things that are kind of pouring out are unscripted realities of what it's like to be a special needs dad. Because I honestly came onto the mic with very specific outline of what I wanted to talk about, I wanted to talk about her adoption, of course, and kind of give that background story and just talk. But, it got to the point where I started talking about what is it like to be a dad of a special needs kid. And I think that you just got the real of it, because I completely went off script of what I was going to talk about and really honestly just got lost in the vibe and the feel of the moment. And so hopefully you're still listening to this, and hopefully you're still, haven't lost interest. But I just also wanted to take that minute to say everything that you just heard in the past 30 minutes was like the raw, real emotion of what it's like to be a special needs dad. And I guess I could go back and read my notes to you and tell you the things that I had scripted out about what it's like. But now that I'm thinking about it at this point in time, it doesn't really matter, because what you did get was, again, the real. You got the real of me sitting here trying to fumble along and really try to explain what it's like. And this is what it's like. It's like living in a void of the unknown. Things right now are great, and that can change at any moment. And I guess you just deal with it moment by moment, and that's the reality of it. And so, sure, there's the stress of missing work. Sure, there's the you never get out of the baby phase, in a sense, right? Like, we have to pack her wheelchair. We have to make sure she's got her meds. We have to make sure that she's got her snacks, and we have to make sure that she's got all this stuff. So it's like there's a part of that never really ends. So that I guess that does add a level of exhaustion to the end of the day. but you just do it, because you do for your kids. And so you just do those things. And those aren't things that I necessarily think about. The things that I get lost and thought about are, she's doing so well today. And, I just want her, I think like every parent, right? We want to outlive our kids. And what I think I struggle with the most, hold on, I need a second here. Okay, what I struggle with the most is the thought of, I have to accept reality that might not be the case. And I don't know how to deal with that part of it. And that's the part that I avoid probably the most. And I know that that's the part that probably I need to spend the most time being real about, and trying to come to some type of acceptance is really what you need to do. You need to find acceptance of that's just the way it is. Not wait for it, not hang on that moment. Allow yourself to enjoy every moment, but also understand that at some point there's an end. And that's, I think, the hardest part of being a special needs dad. Is just trying to come to the understanding at some point I may have to deal with the real grim reality that I don't get to run from this one, and so that's reality. So we're gonna leave that. We're gonna leave that right there. So to any of those parents who have a special needs kid, we stand with you, of course. We understand the difficulties and challenges that come with that. We understand the hostility of the world. We understand that there are people who don't understand and can't fathom that. But we also understand that there is a community of love and support that is out there that is greater than any other. And am so blessed by that as well. And so I am a girl dad. And I am a proud girl dad. I love doing Gia's hair. I love helping her with her nails, although I'm not very good at it, especially with my arthritic hands at 50 years old. But I certainly will fucking try. And I will sit there with her on the floor, and we will play the piano, and we will sing our hearts out. And I love every bit of youthfulness that she brings to my life. And I am so thankful for that, and will forever be thankful for that. And so, Gia, I want this to almost be kind of a diary too, for you to know just how much I will love and always love you, but also how much light and change you've brought to my life for the better too is really incredible. So, all right. So there's kind of the nuts and bolts of the pod. Yeah, I don't even really know how to kind of move forward from all of that. Again, thank you, listeners, for taking the time to really come in. And, I also want to say thank you for the opportunity for me to just be able to crack the mic and let it bleed, really just kind of tell you what's on my heart. And, like I said, this episode got a little bit more serious than I meant to. But I guess that's okay, because the last couple episodes, if you want to lighten the mood, go back and listen to the last couple episodes of season 2 that we're in, and get your laughs. But anyway, Vertigo Nation, thank you so much for the love, support, the continued listening, and I hope everybody is going to enjoy their day, and whatever you are about to do, wherever you are heading when you're listening to this. Hopefully, you're finding some peace and love and light in your life. All right, couple of quick things. One, I want to give a shout out to the Mets. I'm a huge Mets fan, but I don't talk about them much because as a Mets fan, I've also been disappointed a lot of my life. But they seem to be on a pretty good run right now. So, yeah, go Mets. I'm happy about that. What else is going on? What's on my playlist this week? What have I been listening to? I've been kind of still in that kind of hip-hop mood, both, I guess. I've been listening to a lot of just hip-hop lately, which is so weird because I don't often get into rap and hip-hop like moods very often. And when I do, I'm very, very specific in what I listen to. Obviously, you've heard Kelly and I talking about the Wu-Tang Clan for anybody who's been following along with the episodes. But yeah, so pretty wild. But all in all, let me think. I've just, been in kind of like that hip hop kind of mood, creating a hip hop. By the time I've been creating a playlist, by the time I'm finished with the playlist, I'll never listen to the playlist. I'll just have made it, and I'll be so sick of, those songs and that music that I'll have completely moved on and will be listening to like Led Zeppelin or something. I don't know, but that's just the way that it goes. Yeah, so not really anything going on in the fight world. There's not really much UFC news. If you are a UFC fan, my son Sean and his buddy Andy have a great podcast that you can find on Spotify called The Elbow Room. So if you really are a fight fan and you're interested in all things UFC, you can tune into The Elbow Room with my son Sean and, like I said, his buddy Andy. They do a great job. Both of those gentlemen are extremely knowledgeable in UFC specifically. They don't talk about really any of the other promotions, but boy, are they really knowledgeable about what they're talking about. So I haven't really been up to snuff. I've kind of followed the John Jones, Tom Aspinall like thing for a little bit, but yeah, I've kind of been out of the sports light for a little bit. Haven't really been paying too much attention. So I think I've been down the rabbit hole, really, as you've listened to on at least the last couple of episodes of Vertigo, have really been down the rabbit hole of this whole ADH thing and really kind of digging into that. And, I will most likely be talking more about that in later episodes. So, again, with that, I'm going to wrap up and say thank you again, Vertigo Nation. It is always a pleasure. And hit that subscribe button if you're new here. Also, go back and check out some of the other episodes. They are certainly there to make your head spin, and I promise you they will not disappoint. So, with that being said, peace, love, and you know what? Let your head spin, Vertigo Nation.